I'm already in trouble with Mark. We're starting late. Thank you all for coming to the memorial for Mark Medoff. This is really not a memorial. This is a celebration of a great life. When Mark was in the hospital in his last days, he looked at me as I was sitting there and he said, "Am I dying?" And I said, "Yes, you are. You are dying. But it has been such a great ride. You have accomplished so much. You have done so much. You have touched so many lives. And it has been the greatest honor of my life to go on this ride with you. But it's time to take the horse into the stable, take the saddle off, and end the ride. It is my great honor to have put together this memorial. I want to thank Elisa Schwartz. Elisa contacted me shortly after Mark passed away. Elisa and Mark and I worked on a memorial for Dick Rundell 2 years ago. And she said, "Do you need help with Mark's memorial?" And I said, "Absolutely." Elisa found her way to Las Cruces and has been instrumental. And we could not have done this memorial, made this possible, without Elisa Schwartz. So I'm so grateful to you, Elisa. Thank you. I want to thank Jose Loera for putting together the slideshow and fabulous video clips. He's our technical director, and we could not have done this show without Jose, so thank you, Jose. And thank you to Jim Wilkinson from the NMSU Theater Department for his great work with the lighting and the sound and everything he's done for today, so thank you, Jim. I also want to thank my sister-in-law, Jessica, and my colleague, Amy Lanassa, for helping us put this wonderful event together. I hope you enjoy it. In 2014, I wanted to do something for Mark to honor him while he was still here and could enjoy it. And many of you were at an event we did called Far From Finished. It was a fabulous event filled with music and plays and people honoring Mark. And Mark was here and we were able to celebrate his life when he was still with us. The event was called Far From Finished. And in 2014, Mark was very far from finished. After 2014, he wrote 3 stage plays, 2 produced movies, and 2 novels. Well, Mark is very much still with us. And I want to bring Mark on stage now from 2014, Far From Finished.
First thing I would like to say is that I'm glad I could be here tonight. You don't have to attend my funeral now. You can just rent the video. Oh my goodness. For now, Ross has given me 8 minutes to rebut all the nice things that people have said about me tonight. On a recent afternoon, my student, my protege, my colleague, my teacher, Amy Lanassa, who co-wrote the script for tonight's event, stood in my office door, right next to her office, as if making her case before some final tribunal or working out something to put on my urn. She said to me, "Your problem is you like everyone." I was too astonished to demur. She went on, though, to say, "You insist on seeing the good in people, even the awful ones." I wanted to cry out, my voice echoing throughout Milton Hall, that I really don't like everyone. The person, say, who has screwed up the traffic lights in Las Cruces, or, as Amy likes to occasionally point out, the few among my ostensible colleagues who must speechify meanly about me in order to pretend to feel better about themselves. Failing to realize that at this point in my life, I am way out of the reach of the slings and arrows, poison. But I love that Amy has risen up in rancor to protect my reputation. And okay, she might be onto something. Yes, I am in a phase of my life where I try to embrace what I've told my children all of their lives, that it costs you nothing to be polite to people. My mother asked me many times from the time I was 15 and knew that I was a writer in progress. She said, "Why can't you write something nice?" I took that to mean a happy ending. And I think of myself in the new realist tradition of writers who put their protagonists through terrible crucibles, but allow them to hold out some hope at the end. Provocative word. Hope. Could mean optimism. Could mean courage, which in turn could mean audacity. The evolution of this event paralleled another seminal event in the life of our family, the birth of Hope Elizabeth Harrison. Hope is not expected to survive her gestation period. The birth process, the first minutes, the first hours, the first days, the first month. She is almost 5 months old today, brave and audacious indeed, for she has defied her fate foretold. She talks in a language we're able to translate. She smiles, she stares into your eyes, she stares beyond you into some soul that probably none of us is sure he or she has. And out of that comes a tsunami of love. Come on. Come on. Come on. When asked what my greatest accomplishment in life is, the answer is always out of my mouth before I have time to think of a thought. Deborah, Rachel, Jessica, and my best friend, my muse, the love of my life, the greatest backseat driver in the history of the combustion engine. The person whom one of our dearest friends some years ago named the glue. You, Stephanie Medoff. There is no me to honor without her and those three back there. I, whom my mother asked for a happy ending, has actually come through the kindness and love of many, many people to embrace the opposite. I do believe in happy endings. The three words Dick and William texted almost simultaneously. Any guesses? Hope springs eternal. Even for old people who aren't quite finished. So thank you to all of you for this recognition of not just me, but the entire Medoff, Marks, Harrison, Bunchman family. Thank you.
7 years ago, Mark said to my wife Deborah and I that he would like our daughter Grace to start singing. He had this tremendous insight that she should become a singer. Well, since that time, Grace has fallen in love with music and wants to pursue a career in performance as a singer. Mark got her lessons with the fabulous Della Bustamante to teach her to sing. And then Mark asked if Grace would learn his favorite song, Desperado. Here now, singing Desperado, Grace Marks.
Desperado, why don't you come to your senses? You've been out riding fences for so long now. Oh, you're a hard one, but I know that you got your reasons. These things that are pleasing you can hurt you somehow. Don't you draw the queen of diamonds, boy, she'll beat you if she's able. You know the queen of hearts is always your best bet. Now it seems to me some fine things have been laid upon your table, but you only want the ones you can't get. Desperado, oh, you ain't getting no younger. Pain and your hunger, they're driving you home. And freedom, oh freedom, well that's just some people talking. Your prison is walking through this world all alone. Don't your feet get cold in the wintertime? The sky won't snow and the sun won't shine. It's hard to tell the nighttime from the day. You're losing all your highs and lows. Ain't it funny how the feeling goes away? Desperado, why don't you come to your senses? Come down from your fences and open up the gate. It may be raining, but there's a rainbow above you. You better let somebody love you. Let somebody love you. Oh, you better let somebody love you before it's too late. Thank you. Thank you. Now introducing my grandma, the one and only, the glue, Stephanie Medoff.
You don't know how hard this is. So the Eagles' Desperado was really one of Mark's all-time favorite songs. And about 4 months ago, he asked Grace to learn it for him, and he heard her sing it only one time before today. Gracie had a singing gig at St. Clair's Winery on the patio, and the whole family went except me. I stayed at La Posada, the hospice house, with Mark, and by then he was unresponsive. Our son-in-law videoed Gracie singing Desperado on the patio and texted it to me, and even though I didn't think Mark would really hear it, I held my cell phone up to his very still face, and I pressed play. This is the text I sent back to the family. Friday, April 19th, exactly 4 weeks ago from today, 8:44 p.m. OMG, all caps, 2 exclamation points. The moment I turned Gracie singing Desperado on, Dad opened his eyes, slits but open, and his legs started shaking. The shaking stopped, but he didn't close his eyes again until the song was over. He heard his Gracie. The lyrics that particularly spoke to Mark: Desperado, your prison is riding through this world all alone. You'd better let somebody love you before it's too late. Thankfully, the somebody he let love him was me, and then all those precious others who followed. I met Mark as a student here at the university. I needed 3 more credit hours for a full load that semester. There was a literature class that fit my schedule. I'd never heard of the teacher. Oh, my heavens. That teacher was gorgeous and way smart. I never dreamed that he'd fit into my schedule for the next 49 years. And at the end of those years, I think that master teacher gave me one final assignment. We were in the ICU. The nurse asked him the usual questions. They asked to determine the patient's quality of mind. What's your name? Who's the president? Where are we? And to that he answered, a quaint hotel. I love that, because even with my full faculties, I wouldn't have come up with the word quaint. And the nurse leaves, and then Mark says, let's get out of here. We can't, honey. He said, let's just go to bed. You're in bed, sweetheart. Then get me out of it. I can't. And then, exhausted from this little exchange, he turns to me and says, with real clarity, stop whining about can't. And he turns away. And that scene is played over and over in my head. It really won't leave me alone. And so I'm thinking, is that my final assignment? Embrace what we had with wonder and such gratitude, and then live and love on? No whining about can't? And I know, when I feel a whine about can't coming on, I could turn to anybody in this room, and you'd help me. Thank you for being here. And Mark loves you all too.
Mark so loved Las Cruces and his great state of New Mexico. He devoted, and when you think of New Mexico, I think one of the things you think of is Mark Medoff. And we're extremely honored today to have our governor, Michelle Lujan Grisham, with us. Mark was such a believer in film. She's a huge supporter of film, honoring Mark's legacy. Mark devoted his life to education. She's a major supporter of education. So I can't think of a better governor to be in office than Michelle Lujan Grisham, and I am extremely honored to ask her to come up and say a few words on behalf of the great state of New Mexico.
I am rarely, if those of you who know me, at a loss for words, but this might be the day. I think it was very important in this program so far because I don't know the Medoff family personally, and I am so grateful to all of them. And Stephanie, thank you for your incredibly wise, beautiful words and letting everyone in this room have that personal moment together with you. I think that's incredibly important. Whew. I was at another really tough funeral, and this really worked. Oh, it worked again. I highly recommend it. But your words about can't and his words about hope and optimism is a state I see every single day. And when a legend, and being named as a legend by the university, and dedicating your life and your career to this community and in this state, and leading and living through your heart, and inspiring so many others, is exactly what is special about this place. And while I'm going to read a proclamation, it's very clear about making sure that we have a Mark Medoff Day and that we celebrate that day and that we think about all that enriches where we are and who we are and what we can still be. I want to say just thank you for including me because everyone needs hope and optimism. And this day is the beginning of those feelings for so many people statewide. And the other thing I can do is declare that while you all were here and Mark was here and he chose this place, he chose us. You know, people get recruited for jobs all the time. He chose us. He chose to stay here. He's so famous and so talented and so successful, he could choose anywhere in the world, and he chose this community. He chose you. And I think that I can, by the power you have given me, just declare he is a lifelong, born here, adopted New Mexican forever. And I've done that just now. I would like to read a proclamation declaring Mark Medoff Day, but I'd like to tell you why we're doing that. State of New Mexico, Executive Office, Santa Fe, New Mexico, proclamation. Whereas Mark Medoff was a widely acclaimed and award-winning literary talent who served as faculty at the New Mexico State University for more than 50 years, co-founding NMSU's American Southwest Theater Company. And whereas Mark Medoff's breakthrough play titled When You Comin' Back, Red Ryder, opened off-Broadway in 1973, eventually winning the Drama Desk and Obie Awards, and was also adapted into a film. And whereas Children of a Lesser God was a portrait of a deaf identity that helped to bring deaf characters and actors to Broadway. The play opened in 1980 and ran for 887 performances, winning a Tony for the best play and was later adapted into a film. And whereas the film adaptation of Children of a Lesser God, starring William Hurt and Marilee Matlin, won an Academy Award for Best Actress, making actor Marlee Martin the youngest winner of the award at age 21. Medoff was also nominated for an Oscar for the movie's screenplay. And whereas Mark Medoff held a master's degree in English from Stanford University and is credited with discovering actor Neil Patrick Harris at a school drama camp, whom he cast in the film Clara's Heart. Harris later went on to star in TV and film. And whereas Mark Medoff was an Aggie for most of his professional life, his work was thought-provoking, poignant, inclusive, and groundbreaking. And whereas Mark Medoff epitomized the creative spirit of New Mexico through his generosity and willingness to share his light with students and global audiences, And now, therefore, I, Michelle Lujan Grisham, Governor of the State of New Mexico, do hereby proclaim May 19th, 2019, as Mark Medoff Day. Thank you. Throughout the entire state of New Mexico, done at the executive office of this 13th day of May 2019. And while these proclamations are beautiful and wonderful, what I'd like you to know is I'm going to present this on my way out, and then we will do many framed copies so that the family has these framed copies and the university has a framed copy as well. Thank you all very much for allowing me to say goodbye on behalf of the entire state of New Mexico.
Mark taught at New Mexico State University for 52 years. No matter how busy he got in his career in Hollywood and in the theater, he always taught at least one class a semester at New Mexico State University. I am so privileged and honored to continue his tradition as a faculty member at New Mexico State University, but he truly bled Aggie Crimson. So I would now like to bring to the stage the Chancellor of New Mexico State University, Dan Arvizu.
I was a student here at New Mexico State University when Professor Mark Medoff was making a name for himself in Broadway. And it's well known that his classes were always in high demand. You'll hear stories that students followed him from his office to his class, just hoping that some of his brilliance would rub off on them, or that he might see some small bit of brilliance in the work that those students had created. It should be recognized that Mark made an impact, not only on the students he taught, but also on the students who never took a class from him. They would ask and think to themselves, who is this guy with all this attention on the national stage? And how lucky am I to be here? And he is with us at our university. The fact that even after all the success and even with the options to go anywhere, as the governor suggested, he chose to be here in Las Cruces and at New Mexico State University is really a testament to who he was and his character and his addition to the enchantment of New Mexico. He made us think about high standards that NMSU should set for us as students. We had to think bigger. We had to challenge our own beliefs, far beyond our little spot in New Mexico and beyond our own small world. He also made a sustained impact on our faculty and our staff. He called us to a higher level of teaching. Many aspired to his level of competence, a commitment to great work and our own humanity. Everyone was so proud he was working here at NMSU, working alongside you almost. His commitment to the university was unquestioned and unchallenged. He had countless ideas of new areas of study, new notions of how the curriculum could be made more relevant to the students. Most importantly, he made us proud, darn proud to be students and alums of NMSU. We honor what he has called us to do our best work, to work for the students, to be passionate about the work and the university he dedicated himself to, NMSU. My first recollection of Mark Medoff's work was the play, When You Comin' Back, Red Ryder, as the governor suggested, written when I was a student, and then later winning the awards with the Drama Desk and the Obie Awards. Lots transpired in the next 50 years, and Mark went on to touch many in our community, many in our university, many in our state, and beyond. My last encounter with Mark was after he was already in failing health, and Mark and daughter Deborah came to my office to pitch a project that really was aimed at honoring another one of our local heroes and someone who he felt recognition was due, and in doing so, support the university. And it was just the type of selfless action that we have all grown to know from our dear and beloved Mark Medoff. He will truly be missed. In closing, let me leave you with a quote from Khalil Gibran as we celebrate Mark's life and our own grief. When you are sorrowful, look again in your heart, and you shall see that in truth you are weeping for that which has been your delight. Thank you.
Mark has a brother, Bud, and sadly, Bud could not be here today due to his own health. He's in failing health himself, but he asked me to read this to all of you. Thanks to everyone for coming today to honor my brother, Mark. My name is Bud, and because of medical issues, I can't be here today. I've asked Ross, Mark's son-in-law and best friend, to convey these thoughts about Mark as a brother. Mark had asthma as a child, and at 6 years old had to go board at a private school in Miami Beach for a year. We moved from Illinois to Miami Beach in 1949. Mark was my guiding light. He basically raised me from the 4th grade and on through college. Mark taught me everything. He built up my confidence in myself while nurturing me. We had one fight, and Mark gave me an arm punch. I got mad, and we went to the movies that day anyway. Mark was 12 and I was 9. To get back at him for the arm punch, I boinged him for the entire movie, just repeatedly saying boing, boing, boing for 2 hours. By the time the movie was over, Mark was laughing and I was boinged out. Mark always took me with him during high school events. I was 2 grades behind him, and it was great to be with the older guys. Mark was my idol my whole life. He was the greatest brother, friend, mentor, and supporter I had. We never fought except for the one time I boinged him. I was always so proud that Mark was my brother. He was such a special person. He built up my confidence and encouraged me and told me I could achieve things I had never thought I could do. You're going to hear a lot of great things about Mark today. They're all true. Mark was one of a kind. He taught me how to be polite, to talk to people, how to ask a girl out, built me up in sports. He was always encouraging me and showing me respect as well as how to respect others, giving me books to read that he thought I would like and could learn from. He was the greatest and best brother ever. Mark was extraordinarily thoughtful and generous, both on a personal level and to those in need, kind and considerate, humble and gracious. We are thankful for all the joy and inspiration he brought to us. I love my brother so much, and I'll keep him in my heart forever. Knowing Mark, he's up there working on a new production already. I love you, Marky boy. I always have, and I always will. Bud Medoff. One of Mark's oldest and dearest friends, also a faculty member at New Mexico State University, Phil Treon. When Mark was in the hospital, he said to me, I said, is there anything I can do for you, Mark? And one of the few things he asked, he says, I want to see Phil Treon, which told me just how special and how important Phil was in Mark's life. I remember taking independent study with Mark when I was a student at New Mexico State University, and the class met on the golf course, and Phil would often join us. I had the great pleasure and privilege of learning from Phil and calling Phil a friend, and now I'd like to bring on stage one of Mark's oldest, closest friends, Phil Treon.
Stephanie and Ross and Debbie, Rachel, Jessica, thank you for this opportunity to honor Mark. Mark and I were friends for over 50 years, and it's impossible to distill 5 decades of friendship into a few words. but I thought if I wrote a personal note to him, that might scratch the surface. So I'll read it to you now. Dear Mark, you wore and doffed many hats, writer, director, producer, teacher, but the one hat you never removed, the one you always wore snug under the others, was your family and friends hat. You were my amigo whether I was commercial fishing in Hawaii, freelance writing in Nashville, or teaching here at NMSU. You were my compass and anchor, always pointing the way, but always here, home, or in nautical terms, good holding ground. Those of us lucky enough to collaborate with you know that you listened closely to our ideas and freely shared yours, and you selflessly promoted the work of others. You told us how hard the journey would be, and then you guided us every step of the way. Stephanie and I met as students in one of your classes. When you were married at a friend's house, my then wife Jean and I were honored to be there. And we were there when Red Ryder opened in New York. We were living out of an old truck surfing in Mexico, but we packed up and drove to the Big Apple where you and Stephanie welcomed us. After the final curtain, we huddled in Sardi's, nervously awaiting the reviews off a ticker tape machine. When they came, they were raves, and you were jubilant. You said the easiest thing in the world is to not write, but write you did, working harder than anyone I ever knew. Always you had multiple projects in the air, not like a juggler, but like an air traffic controller, with flights stacked up over LaGuardia, plays, films, novels. Always you worked. When I last saw you in hospice, you were on the phone with a London producer. My lovely wife, Janet, often says I could go on, and she's right. So I'll stop here and say, Mark, you've left this theater for another, but whatever stage you're on, break a leg. Thank you. Now I'm pleased to introduce Mark's dear friend, Brandon Brown, who will perform from The Heart Outright, which was one of Mark's favorites. Brandon?
Now, when I first went into the porno business, I kept it kind of quiet. Well, kind of quiet. I kept it absolutely and totally quiet. But when I went in to start changing how the porno business does business, well, then the local paper wanted to do a feature on me. Well, I only been in the paper once before in my life, and that weren't none too terrific. Got held hostage in that diner I used to work out back home, but that's another story. Sure, I said to that reporter, man, sure, why not? Might be good for business. Let people know I'm trying to dignify that which ain't usually viewed as having any dignity. Well, then this article come out with a big old picture of me standing out in front of the theater here and a big old King Kong size headline, The Dirty Picture Man. Then my wife and me is confronted by our entire church, to which I'd given a lot of credit in the article for helping me be the best me I could be. Now the big boys of the church are telling me, the bottom line they're handing me is, we are embarrassed by what you're doing and by your connection to us. So I said, all right, I will resign the church. I don't want to embarrass you all. They said, no, that's not what we want. Cries coming from all parts of the church. I said, thank you for your support. I will not quit the church. I love the church. I love coming here every Sunday and sitting down with you folks. Much relief amongst the assembled good people of this good and faithful place. Well, and anyway, I am not going to give up what I'm doing in that other world, because you people gave me the strength to go to it, and folks ain't got nothing else. Well, news of this confrontation got out and actually helped business, I think. One of the regulars whispered to me over the concession counter. He said, Mr. Ryder, they cannot do that to you. I am going to come twice this week. I said, thank you very much, and please reword that next time. Here's your popcorn and some extra napkins. Now, my new church, I guess you could say, my friends, are the repeaters. People that come to see my movies and eat my popcorn and drink my lemonade every time I change the program. Some of them have even taken to speaking to me. That's right. No names yet. And no conversation that's going to satisfy the soul's ultimate longing, but we're speaking, and that's something. That's something. And you know, I don't even know what would satisfy my soul's ultimate longing, even if anybody got around to asking me, but I've been thinking lately about butts in the urinals. Now, maybe some of you fellas have noticed this wherever you go, no pun intended. And it ain't just places, you know, occupied by fellas like me. No, sir, it don't matter how fancy a place it is, you find cigarette butts in the urinals in the men's room. Now, what do you suppose it is about men, about in our secret insides, the way we see ourselves, that we flick our butts in the urinals in the men's room? Is it that we need help? And is it that we don't know it, or that we can't admit it to anyone, least of all our own selves? So we flick our butts in the urinals for the next guy to see, and maybe to know that there's other folks in the world that are thinking about themselves the same way he thinks about himself. Or is it just that we do it so somebody will have to clean it up? So that some man, or better yet, some woman will have to degrade themselves and picking those butts out of there. Good God, man, we're supposed to head families, lead nations and churches, and be heroes to children and wives and girlfriends, be better than what most of us are. Boys like me grew up thinking we'd be bigger than life. But then Nam happened, and Women's Lib, and all those assassinations, and good Lord, so much horrible stuff the last few decades that maybe we just feel powerless against the world. I tell you what, it scares the unholy hell out of me. But I told my wife, one of these days I'm going to do something about it. When I get myself worked up enough, I'm going to pretend the film breaks. And while we're waiting for it to get spliced back together, I'm going to offer up a fresh pot of coffee on the house. I'm going to sit down with those men, and I'm going to build up the courage to ask them what they think it's all about. Them, me, bring up the whole subject of butts in the urinals. And just what it is about us men that maybe shouldn't be left there in the sadness, anger, and the darkness of that room. My wife says I'm crazy. You'll never ask and they'll never answer. Well, she may be right. But damn it, I got to give it a try. Thank you.
My father, our daddy. He's my first thought upon waking up every morning and my last thought before falling asleep at night. One morning last week, I woke up and started giggling, which was very unusual because most mornings I wake with an incredible weight on my heart. But on this particular morning, I wake up and I start giggling. I was giggling because I kept hearing my father's voice in my head saying urine hut. Now, one of the things I love the most about my family is our sometimes very, very inappropriate sense of humor. And that morning I was remembering a fantastic family driving trip up to Mount Rushmore, the summer of 1989. We all piled into my mom's brand new, top-of-the-line Astro minivan and headed north. Ross and my father had this incredible way of bantering back and forth, and no topic was off limits, so somewhere barreling up I-25, instead of calling our pit stops bathroom breaks like a normal family, Dad and Ross insisted that we stop at what we had to call urine huts. Yep. Welcome to the Medoff family, everyone. Rachel, Jessica, and I grew up in the most loving, tight-knit family of 5, and even though we considered a lot of my parents' friends and colleagues and co-workers and students families, we were very, very much a family unit of 5. A fortress is a label that was given to us by someone long ago. We lived in a home surrounded by literature, art, music, and theater. Each of us girls went on to pursue our own artistic goals with the absolute support of Dad. He encouraged us, and he made us believe that we could be anything we wanted to be as long as we were willing to put in the work. He very, very often said to us, "You have to be willing to hang your ass out on the line and risk success and risk failure if you want to achieve anything worthwhile. Work. You must do the work." That's great advice. We were raised in the theater, going to almost every rehearsal of every play Dad ever wrote or directed, starting with productions at the Las Cruces Community Theater when it was housed in the Fountain Theater in Mesilla. My parents never considered us too young to be included, no matter how mature the content. They set the bar very high. They taught us proper theater etiquette and encouraged us to be active participants, and we thrived in that environment. Thank you, Daddy, for those experiences and for giving us an opportunity to create and to perform. I consider my father the smartest man I know. One of my favorite memories is a summer afternoon when I was about 12 years old. I was really bored, and I asked my father if he could suggest a good book. He thought for a moment, then took me into his library, pulled out a book, and simply said, "I think you'll like this story." That book was To Kill a Mockingbird, and it changed my life, becoming my favorite piece of literature. Wow, novels have the power to move you that much? What else do you have for me, Daddy? From then on, he became my go-to person on what to read. Thank you, Daddy, for fostering my lifelong love of reading. Anyone who's ever been, my dad was a lover of music. Some of my earliest memories are of waking up to his music. He was very, very disciplined and would get up every morning at around 5 a.m., go to his library, turn on his music, and write before waking his girls up to feed us breakfast and get us to school. And also the poor guy would also try to do our hair, which was not one of his best talents. But he hung his ass out on the hairdo line, and he risked that failure every single day. He introduced us to everything from Rachmaninoff to Bruce Springsteen's to the Eagles. And recently, I was really surprised to see a song by rapper Eminem on his computer playlist. Thank you, Daddy, for filling our home with beautiful and diverse music and fostering Jessica's incredible talent. Anyone who's ever been to our house has seen the many pieces of artwork collected over 47 years. Each and every piece has a meaning to my parents. Some purchased because they reminded them of one of their girls. Many of the artists are very close friends of our family, giving the walls of our home a sacred, safe feeling. Thank you, Daddy, for filling our home with meaningful artwork and fostering Rachel's incredible talent for drawing and designing. When my father entered into hospice on April 12th, there was a tremendous outpouring of love from people from all around the nation. So many phone calls, texts, emails, Facebook messages, and visits to hospice. I knew he was a beloved person, but it was remarkable, the outpouring of love to him and to all of us. My son Kagan commented on the number of people who came to hospice to share their memories and one last moment with a person very dear to their heart. And I told him, I said, Poppy was beloved by so many people, but there are only 8 people on earth lucky enough to call him Poppy. And there are only 3 people on earth lucky enough to call him Daddy. And that's what we call him. Even though we are middle-aged or very close to that, he is still our daddy. He is the creator of so many important pieces of work, but none more inspiring and sacred as our family, The Fortress. The character Scout in To Kill a Mockingbird has said, with him, life was routine. Without him, life is unbearable. My heart is broken into a million pieces because the love of my father made it so whole. Thank you, Daddy, for choosing me and for making our family so whole. I love you bigger than the sky. Now I'd like to introduce a longtime family friend and a man that is also a surrogate father to Rachel, Jessica, and I, Bob Steinberg.
Okay, Governor. We'll see. We'll see. God, I love that man. But I'm a little pissed off at him. I thought we had a deal. I've been telling him for years that he had to last longer than me because he'd be so much more eloquent for me than I could be for him. But here I am. I met Mark in 1976. We became friends immediately, and he was invited to bring a new play to the University of Rhode Island where I was teaching. Easily the most important outcome of that production was that I had the opportunity to introduce him to my wife, Phyllis Freelick. Mark knew that she was an actor, and after a few niceties, he asked her what kinds of plays deaf actors performed. She said, well, they took known plays, translated them into sign language, because no one had ever written a play for deaf actors. All right, he said, like maybe 15 minutes after meeting her. I'll write one for you. Really? Yes. So I took a sabbatical, moved my family to Las Cruces to work on this play, which he had called Children of a Lesser God. It's a good title. The play moved very quickly from New Mexico State to the Mark Taper Forum in Los Angeles. But only 3 scenes from the New Mexico production actually made it to Los Angeles. But those 3 scenes, that's where the magic was. And everything he wrote thereafter was based on and built around those scenes. And that's when I really began to understand and appreciate the full measure of Mark's genius. He had sufficient confidence in his talent to approach the work without ego. He would redirect his efforts without hesitation. He was uniquely flexible, responsive, and absolutely fearless. But he wasn't done yet. We got to Los Angeles. Halfway through the rehearsal process, it was determined that the second act needed to be entirely reconceived. Mark disappeared from rehearsals, reappeared 2 days later with an entire new second act, 60 pages of dialogue, 2 days. Another example of his genius. The man was fast. I'm talking fast. Well, Children had a successful run in Los Angeles, and pretty soon, in no time at all really, we found ourselves preparing for a Broadway production. And as luck would have it, the play opened just as New York City was hit by a transit strike. No buses, no subways, and good luck finding a cab. Well, the thing started slowly, but they built very quickly. Pretty soon, the audiences were bigger day after day. Word of mouth had defeated a transit strike. Then came the Tony nominations. Oh my goodness. Sold-out houses were the norm after that. The Tony Awards themselves, that evening, that event, it's a blur in my mind, except for one thing, one prominent exception. Mark and Stephanie and Phyllis and I shared a limo that evening, and the rides to and from the Tony Awards are an indelible memory. The tense, nervous journey on the way to the event. And the joyous disbelief in that car afterwards as we screamed and laughed our way from one after party to the next. And that was only the beginning. There were countless adventures yet to come. Mark would go on to write 5 plays for Phyllis. The work was endlessly joyful and always informed by Stephanie's thoughtful and incisive input upon which Mark so relied. The fun, the thousands of hours we spent working, laughing, and of course eating and drinking cannot be measured. There will never be another like him. And how lucky was I to have shared that remarkable journey with my amazing wife and my dearest friend. And speaking of Tony Awards, have a look at this.
And the winner is Children of a Lesser God.
The dream meets reality. I use a sign in the play. It means to be joined in a shared relationship. And I want to share this wonderful award with my family, with my agent, Gilbert Parker, with my colleagues and students at New Mexico State University, where Children of a Lesser God began, with our companies at the Mark Taper Forum and here in New York, and then with 4 people whose passion and wisdom, whose very spirits guided me. John Rubenstein, Gordon Davidson, Bob Steinberg, and the incomparable Phyllis Freelig. We are, all of us, joined. And I want to send a kiss through the wires to my children, to my friends in Las Cruces, and to my mother and father, who are very proud. Thank you.
Mark recently, the last project he worked on was a feature film called Walking with Herb. Sadly, Mark will not be at the premiere of the film, but the film is going to be dedicated very much in his name and in his memory. The novelist of Walking with Herb is here, and I want to bring one of my dear friends, one of the finest men that I know, Joe Bullock.
Thank you, Ross. I'm both honored and to ask to be speaker today and humbled by the quality of the other speakers. Mark Medoff and I became golf buddies when I moved back to Las Cruces in the late 80s. Although we both came to New Mexico State in about the same time in the 60s, I was an agricultural major and didn't have much interface with the creative folks in the English department. I dealt more with manure than metaphors. Big difference. With metaphors, with metaphors, unlike metaphors, it's okay to mix manure. And Ross, you started with your stable horse thing there. That started that. Mark and I always hooked each other's senses of humor, and as such, my first almost collaboration with Mark occurred when he was working on his play Primate. Apparently, Mark thought the ending with the gorilla dying was too dark. I got a call from our mutual friend Mickey Clute telling me that Mark wanted me to come see a rehearsal and see if I could come up with something lighter for the ending. I did as I was asked, but unfortunately, the best line I could come up with was, "Where does a 600-pound gorilla go to die?" And of course the answer is, anywhere he wants to. Well, some of you thought that line was a hell of a lot funnier than Mark did, because he never used it. Like many of us here today, I believe Mark's greatest contributions were what he inspired in all of us, how absolutely thrilled he was when a seed he planted in someone else rooted and sprouted. It gave him more joy than anything he did for himself. I think of Mark as some sort of a special kind of corkscrew. It's like he thought of us, all of us, as being bottles of fine vintage wine, and his mission was to get the cork out so that everyone could share it. And that's, I think, a great legacy for Mark. One of the most wonderful things that ever happened to me was getting to work with Mark as he turned my little book, Walking with Herb, into an amazing screenplay. Amazing to the point that one of the most prolific actors of our time, Edward James, almost told us, "I don't want to do this movie, I have to do this movie." And he told us that he thought it was the best script he'd ever seen in all the hundreds of scripts he had read or acted in. I was both flattered and astonished that Mark would call me over to his house as he was writing his screenplay, asking me, "Joe, what do you think about this?" Or, "Joe, are you okay with making this change in the story?" My reply was always, "Mark, you're a Tony-winning writer. I'm an aging small-town banker. Who do you think should be driving this bus?" Hell yes, you can make the changes. We didn't know it at first, but as time went on, it became painfully obvious that Walking with Herb would be Mark's last project. And Ross, our actors, our editor, Bob Lambert, everyone involved in the movie developed an ever-increasing dedication to make sure this movie would be really special. Something Mark would be especially proud of, maybe like the cherry on the top of the sundae of his career. And we're almost done with the movie, and we pray that we got it right. And I think all of us here, whether you're students or co-workers or collaborators with Mark, I think the greatest thing we can do with Mark is to continue his legacy by telling stories that need to be told. Now, Mark, I wish you could be here at our premiere, but somehow I believe you're going to have the best seat in the house, old friend. Bless you and shalom. Thank you.
Shiloh Holloway, Mark's adopted son, like a son, was at the hospital and at Mark's side just as much as I was. And I remember in Shiloh, and I will never forget this, when Mark laid in his hospital bed and he was staring off and we thought the end was minutes away, I said to Mark, "Let go, it's okay. You can go. You've lived such a great life. You've accomplished so much. You've done so much. You've just been so incredible." And then Shiloh said, "Well, what do you say to the person that's lived a perfect life?" And Mark, who hadn't spoke for 30 minutes, said, "Nice try." Shiloh, my brother, please come to the stage.
Welcome to the Medoff Family Memorial. My name is Shiloh Holloway, and I am Mark's son. Now, I know some of you are scratching your heads, and you're trying to make a connection, maybe with resemblance. So let me help you out real quick. I'm African American, but my afro is Jewish. My sister Jessica calls it a Jewfro. However, the title designated unto me by Daddy Medoff was unofficial adopted son. Now, in a short amount of time, I want to tell you the most important thing that I can about Daddy Medoff. And in doing so, I must obligate myself into two words: compassion and family. Because I cannot talk about Daddy Medoff without talking about Mama Medoff, because he believed so strongly in the power of the matriarch. Now, as you may have already noticed, the building says Mark and Stephanie Medoff, and that's because he refused to take all the credit for his success. Believe me when I say this, on my journey, I have lost two fathers, two great fathers. I still have 3 brothers, 7 sisters, 1 love, 1 daughter, and 2 wonderful, amazing moms. And yes, over the years, Daddy Medoff has taught me that women rule. And if you don't believe me, just give it some time. You'll just see for yourself. I guess it's just you who has yet to be, as he would say, radically feminized. Now, the relationship that transpired amongst us was unrivaled, fortified, and Socratic. Daddy and Mama Medoff constantly fortified and refortified love and compassion. For every time I made a mistake or I was in trouble, they were always there in my corner. I mean, you have to see it to believe it. I mean, do you know anyone that will adopt a 17-year-old black male from the streets, the unforgiving streets of California? And with a thick, stark awareness of 400 years of oppression. Better yet, have you ever seen a white woman in the middle of the night in her nightgown at the police station with her checkbook in hand, terrifying the police, waiting to bail out her black son? Like I said, unrivaled. And Daddy Mark made sure that I understood I am family. Daddy Mark believed in compassion, sympathy, and empathy. He was in the business of making people feel very well. He believed the best situation for learning was teaching and learning from the same people he taught. He would want me to quote somebody, probably Socrates, Acknowledgments, but I really don't have the time. However, his old-fashioned wisdom was ecumenical, and we are all better human beings because of him. Thank you, Mark. I love you, and I miss you. Now, I would like to introduce to you the beautiful, talented, smart, creative, And if you have a sister, you also know I also mean bratty. Jessica Medoff Bunchman.
My brother from another mother, who's here. Thank you for coming. You probably never heard anyone say that about your own son. When Ross told me that my father had asked him that I sing on his memorial service, I thought, absolutely not. How would I ever do that? How could I possibly do that? But the answer is, he told me I could do anything, and I will. It's an honor to sing for him. I had planned to sing a song of my choosing, and then a week ago, my brother-in-law Bobby was reading my father's yet-to-be-published book called Hopeful, A Reckoning with the Universe, about Hopi. And in a paragraph it says, I imagine my daughter singing at my memorial service at the Mark and Stephanie Medoff Theater, truly, the song that she whispered in my ear as we danced our father-daughter dance at her wedding. To which I said to this guy, you're crazy, but I'm crazy too. So this is that, by request. Would I be standing here after all these years among the stars above? Maybe not, if it wasn't for your love, smiling faces all around, like when a king has just been crowned. A battle has been won that I'd have lost if it wasn't for your love. A fairy tale unfolds, more true than stories I've been told. At last my chance to shine, and all in perfect time. A life I once dreamed of. Who'd have thought if it wasn't for your love? A wonderful surprise to have a light so bright it blinds, blinds. But finally I see how it feels to live a dream. But would I have touched the sky, ever flown so high? Ooh, not I. If it wasn't for your love, your love. Thank you. Among the many things my father taught me, like being crazy and singing at his funeral, is to keep your ass out on the line. And I am so honored to be putting my ass out on the line for him in his posthumous adventures, because there's a lot, we've got a lot going on, and it's all very exciting, and I'm honored to be the person, along with my sisters and Ross and my mama, to carry that torch. Next, we have a selection from Merrily and Baby Lamb, The Assassination of an American Goddess, which is a play that is forthcoming. You'll hear all about it. So please help me welcome the beautiful, lovely friend of mine, Lena Jorgis.
Hero was originally a feminine word. What happened? She trusted me and I failed her. That I didn't go with her when I knew I should because I was pretending I had not chosen her over my children. That I loved her in the way I dreamed a girl would love her husband. Marie-Lee was my dream. To be Marie-Lee, to be with Marie-Lee, not like lovers, but more. Those who love another unequivocally and thus without judgment. So who will speak for Marie-Lee? Who will speak the truth about her murder? She will always be the wrong memory unless someone... Where are you, Marie-Lee? Thank you.
Hi. If you know us at all, or even just a little bit, you know that sports rule our world, especially baseball. Whatever athleticism our boys have got, they've gotten from Bobby or my dad. Two of our boys are lefties, just like my dad. My dad was an amazing athlete. He was a first baseman, played touch football here on the intramural fields in his much younger years. Played racquetball, tennis, and what he referred to as the old man sport, golf, which ultimately was his favorite. He would take the boys out to hit balls and drive the cart. He taught by example, to give it your all. Don't do anything half-heartedly. Be willing to take the risk and fail, then do it again tomorrow. After his body could no longer take the twisting and pivoting of golf, his new passion, or obsession, if you will, came along. His reason to wake up and breathe every day. Along came Hope E. He and Hope had a bond like no other. Poppy went to almost every doctor's appointment she had. He would go with us from El Paso to Albuquerque. He just wanted to be with her. He would come to her therapy sessions, pick her up from school. If she did it, he wanted to be witness to it. Nearly every morning, I would get a text or a call. What time do I get my baby? Sometimes I would have to tell him, Dad, it's our turn to have her. As it was stated in the paper recently, he was often accompanied by his favorite little girl, Hope E. When he couldn't go on what we called activity time with us anymore, we knew he was sick. When he stopped calling or texting asking me what time he got his baby, we knew he was sick. When he stopped asking for her to come take a nap with him on the big bed, we knew he was sick. She was his everything, his favorite person in the whole wide world, his best friend. So when we got the call that he was on his last breath, it was the most perfect and appropriate thing that could be done. Bobby laid Hopi on her Poppy's left side in his hospice bed, right with him. He was there for her first breath, and she was lying with him for his last. A bond like theirs will live on for eternity.
I was just moral support behind her. I'm just supposed to introduce the next song. But it does have a little emotional introduction as well. So Mark had a love for music. He also had a love for collaboration. As you've seen, actor, collaborator, written on many of people's description. So if you love to write stories and you love music, what are you supposed to do? If you answered, collaborate with a composer and create an opera, you are correct. Or, if you answered he should collaborate with a local young country western singer, you would also be correct. Since mine and Rachel's wedding, he's always given us special gifts of music. For our wedding day, he gave a special song about two young lovers titled As Children We Dream from the opera Sarah McKinnon, composed by Randall Shin, and Mark was the librettist. Now, on this next song that you're about to hear was actually a collaboration between Mark and Josh Greider. This time, the lyrics from the storyline are very real and very close to his heart. His love for his Rachel, his lamb, his puddle, extended and grew exponentially for Hope. Since Hope's birth, Mark was working on a book titled Hopeful, A Reckoning with the Universe. In the early chapters, he writes about the actual birth of hope. And I'm going to read it here in a second, right before the song. But the idea in the lyrics kind of holds the theme from Genesis, with Lord God formed man of the dust of the ground and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and the man became a living soul. So the following that I'm about to read and then be performed by Della Bustamante and J.D. Hinton was actually a collaboration with Josh Greider and Mark. Rachel begs Hope Elizabeth to breathe. Then she orders her to breathe. Then tells her desperately, please, 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 little baby, you have to live. In counterpoint, Bobby chants, may the force of the universe blow the breath of life into you. But Hopi continues to be incompatible with life. Rachel cries almost inaudibly, no, 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 and she rubs the back of the 4-pound, 5-ounce mortal she will never know. Never breastfeed, never kiss some billion times. Breathe, baby Hope, please. And in whatever way, the force of the universe blows the breath of life into baby Hope. For that mortal takes a breath and another, inhales and exhales, here at the beginning of her life in the world.
You look at me looking at you. My head spins from love so new. Emotion that I cannot name. I see you smile, I'm forever changed.
Like butterflies in the summer sky, and moonbeams in your endless eyes. Like roses, like the rising sun, you're the gift of life, my little one. Breath of hope upon my face, breath of hope in time and space, the beating of your living heart, my breath of hope, my hope you are.
My breath of hope, my hope you are.
God, faith, mystery, all I feel but cannot see. Give her of this precious life. Give her a fighting chance to fight. Breath of hope, of time and place. Breath of hope, in time and space. Give her all your living heart. My breath of hope, my hope you are. My breath of hope, my hope you are. My breath of hope, my hope you are.
Thank you, J.D. Andela. Among 30 plays, 19 movies, 3 novels, but I think Mark's greatest creation by far are his 8 grandchildren. I'd like to welcome Kagan Marks, who cannot be here as he's studying animation in Savannah, Georgia. Mark was very proud of him. But Mason Marks, Grace Marks, Cooper Hudson Tucker, and Hope Harrison, and Henry Bunchman.
Hello, everybody. First of all, I would just like to say that my heart has been made full by the kindness that has been extended to my family in the past few weeks. I think I speak for all of us when I say it's been unbelievable, and I don't think I fully comprehended the impact that my grandfather had on this world before I saw how much he meant to all of you. So, my name is Mason Marks, and I am one of the grandkids. I'm humbled to see such a distinguished and creative crowd of people gathered here for my grandpa, and I'm honored to speak on behalf of the grandkids. And I thank the Lord God every single day that I've been born into this family. Like he was to many of those in this room, our Poppy Mark was a teacher and a role model to us. He taught us that the most valuable thing in this world is family and friendship. He taught us that money is a stupid replacement and that fame is temporary. But above all, our grandfather, Mark Medoff, taught us one thing: the raw, primal, existential joy that is the creative force in every single human soul. What I mean is, our grandfather showed us why we make art. The type of art that isn't for money or any validation or anything beside your own spirit's sake. The type of art that gets you so enthralled that you forget to eat or sleep and everything else becomes supplementary. The deep creative atavism that lies in the heart of every soul. Because of our grandpa, I believe there's a point inside of every person that cannot be extinguished. It could be kicked down to little orangey ashes, but as long as you draw breath, it cannot be extinguished. Mark Medoff had a talent of seeing this fire within people, and he would give it life. I saw him do it for countless students, and I saw him do it for my own father. Our grandpa introduced us to art, something that was an infinite source of strength and inspiration to him. He introduced us to something that can never be taken away, something that transcends purpose and place. Our grandpa introduced us to art, and for that, I am eternally thankful. Until I see you again in the heavenly kingdom of God, I love you and I miss you. So rest in peace to Mark Medoff, the greatest grandpa in the entire world. Thank you.
Talk about a tough act to follow. Now I would like to welcome to the stage one of Mark's frequent collaborators, one of his friends, students, proteges, and one of the very few people that Mark ever called boss, Amy Lanasa.
I don't know that Mark ever actually called me boss. I would have liked it. I first met Mark when I was a freshman studying theater at the University of Oklahoma 22 years ago. He was my teacher throughout all 3 of my degrees, my thesis advisor. I've worked for him as an actor. He's directed my work. I've sat around his dining room table countless evenings for readings and feedback. He hired me to come here to NMSU and help build the Creative Media Institute, a job I have loved that defines who I am today. He and Bob Steinberg gave me my nickname, Imola. Every major twist and turn of my adult life has one person in common, Mark Medoff. In order to overcome my anxiety about public speaking, I decided that the only way I was really going to get through this today was to treat it like a class, or like a TED Talk. So today I present to you Amola's 2019 Mark Talk. The most important lessons I learned in 22 years of working with Mark Medoff. Lesson 1, the teacher. I have taken Mark Medoff's writing class more times than anyone else on this planet, except for Stephanie, who's a really great teacher, by the way. We may hire her as an adjunct now that she's got some free time. I have volumes of journals and class notes filled with Mark's pithy teachings. If you can read a play, you can write a play. Writing is easy. You put 2 people in a room and make them talk to each other, add a third, start a fight. Before long, you'll have a play. Write every day for 10 years, and then you'll be a writer. Mark started every new class the same way, well, almost the same way. He would walk into the room, grab a marker or a piece of chalk, and say, "Kurt Vonnegut taught me that this is the only thing you'll ever need to know about writing." And then he'd turn to the board and write exclamation mark, question mark, period. Some of you have had this lesson. Create a situation where the worst thing happens, exclamation mark, that makes an audience wonder, what's going to happen next, question mark. And then you end it, period. Good lesson, right? Except the lesson always changed. Depending on where or when you took this class with Mr. Medoff, you may have learned the only thing you need to know about writing as question mark, exclamation mark, period. Or maybe it's period, question mark, exclamation mark. I have it written down several ways across my notes. And since Mark died, I've been obsessively contacting everyone I know who might remember this lesson to find out what it really was. Because if it's the only thing I ever need to know about writing, then I should correctly remember it, right? Yet everyone I've spoken to remembers it differently, and we each fervently believe that we are correct. Mark once said that he did not know how to teach writing, directing, or acting. He said that what he did know how to do was create space where students could learn about writing, acting, and directing through experiences that would lead to other opportunities. Mark Medoff taught for 52 years here at NMSU. He also taught at the University of Oklahoma, Florida State, the University of Houston, and elsewhere. And everywhere he went, he created space for people to create new work and exchange energy with each other and audiences. I'm privileged to have the kind of job where I get to create those spaces for the students studying film and animation here at NMSU in a space that Mark created. Lesson 2, the mentor. A few years ago, I was asked by New Mexico Women in Film to be a mentor at their Mentor Mania event. It's like a speed dating event where those who need mentors are kind of matched with mentors. I hesitated in a major moment of imposter syndrome, but ultimately agreed to go because it's always great to remind the northern part of the state that we exist. Then I immediately called Mark and asked him to come too. How on earth do you mentor people? I was flummoxed at the thought of it, and the only answer I had was to bring along my own mentor. On the drive up there, he tried to convince me that I certainly knew enough to mentor strangers 5 minutes at a time. He went on to tell me the story from the Odyssey about Mentor, who was really Athena in disguise, who decided to help Telemachus find Odysseus because she believed that Telemachus was a really good guy. She believed in his goodness. I could feel him looking at me as I-25 whipped past us. He laughed and said, "Mentoring is easy, kid, a joy. You already have the most important trait. You automatically presume human goodness." I think that was a nicer way of saying what he told me once years ago when I'd complained that complete strangers confessed their entire life stories to me in airports and at grocery stores. He said it was because I looked like a nun. What a great way to think about mentorship. Just presume human goodness and help people put things into action. I've never known anyone who presumed that every human was good the way Mr. Medoff did. Everyone who ever got to work with him or learn from him benefited from his presumptions. What a lucky group we are. Lesson 3, my friend. Disclaimer. My disclaimer today is that I know that by telling the following story in front of the governor and the chancellor and the YouTube world and pretty much everyone I've ever met, that I run the risk of outing myself as batshit crazy. But May is Mental Health Awareness Month. And, you know, we spend a lot of time talking about IBS and erectile dysfunction, so fair's fair. Years ago, when my office at CMI was still next door to Mark's in Milton Hall, I went through a really bad time. In short, I was clinically depressed. I'd been avoiding Mark because it's hard to face the people who know you best when you're running away from something. I heard him go into his office, so I tried to sneak out and go the other way. "Amala," he always liked to kind of bark at you. "Hey," you know. Sometimes he'd just grab you with a look. I stopped in my tracks and turned around. I leaned in his doorway. He took one look at me, and then my legs came out from underneath me, and I collapsed. crying. He took a long moment and then he said, "Hey, kid, it looks like you're having trouble fighting gravity." Through tears, I agreed. And then I told him that I really didn't think I could keep doing it, that I was pretty sure that gravity was going to win this round. He let me cry for what felt like ages, and he handed me Kleenex one at a time until I caught my breath. And then he said, "Remember when you made me listen to all that Radiohead?" When I was in graduate school, I was obsessed with the band Radiohead. He let me miss his class once to go to an out-of-town concert, but only if I wrote about it. And I turned in my assignment with a stack of 12 CDs I'd burned for him, bootleg albums, everything. I'd written in that paper that the reason I love Radiohead is because they're able to take two things that shouldn't sound good together and make music. That it's this balance of light and dark. He reminded me of this. And then he said, that's what living with depression is like, finding the balance of dissonance to make music, learning to love both the light and the dark. And no matter what, you have to keep fighting gravity. I asked him how he did it. How did he get through it? And he grabbed a piece of paper off his desk. It was the first page of his Journey of the American Hero syllabus. And he turned it over to the blank side, and he handed it to me along with a blue Bic pen, and he said, "You have to write about it." And so I did, and I got better, and I'm still fighting gravity. I am going to profoundly miss you, Mr. Medoff. We all are. I know that I am just one of thousands, if not tens of thousands, of students and creatives whose lives he changed for the better. It is an honor to be here representing all of you today. I'll never get the chance to repay him for everything he taught me, including these 3 lessons. But what I can do is pay it forward, and I hope that you'll do the same. Thank you. And now, it is with great pleasure that I introduce to you someone I heard legend of for years before I actually met him and discovered that he's really more awesome than all previous tales of greatness. Mark's former student, collaborator, and friend, Don Foster.
God, was that beautiful. Everyone here has spoken so eloquently and so authentically today. I'm beginning to think that I might be the only one who wrote his thing down on the hood of a car in the parking lot this afternoon. Now, under any circumstances, I am a world-class procrastinator. I mean, the things that I have not gotten around to doing could fill books I haven't written. But in this case, I know exactly why I put off committing to pencil, to paper, to car hood until today. And it's because I couldn't bear, and I know a lot of you here get it, I could not bear to put those words Mark and was side by side so closely together. Because to me, Mark is so much a part of me. He is such a big part of my life and so many things all at once in a big way. Mark is the reason I'm a writer. Mark is the man who changed my life by having more confidence in me than I had in myself. Mark is a stone-cold badass. I mean, did you happen to catch on national TV the Tony Awards there where he flashed the Las Cruces gang sign? Like on a scale of 1 to Samuel Jackson, how badass is that, right? Mark is the voice in my head that says, come on, get up, write, repair the world. Tikkun olam, baby, come on, get up, time's a-wasting. Mark got up at 4:30 every morning. I think about that every day when I hit the snooze at 9:30. Mark is what happens when a bright young writer devotes 50 years of his life to teaching instead of the writer's traditional side hustles of drinking, grousing, and selling out. Mark is what happens when an angry young man is a wise old soul, when a man's man is a genuine feminist, when a jock is a bookworm, and when a handsome, neurotic, whip-smart professor from a Philip Roth novel puts on a pair of dingo boots and wanders into an Eagles song. Mark is the voice in my head that says, you didn't have to mention the dingo boots. Mark is the voice in my head. Mark is the life so boldly, so passionately, so well lived that death trembled to take him. But Mark is now free of his corporal body and freed from this narrow band of linear time that we are all so damn hung up on. So Mark is free to bring the full force of his being to every single moment, all in, everywhere, all the time. Life couldn't keep him from doing that. Death doesn't stand a chance. I'd go on, but car hoods get very hot.
Well, there he goes. Would love to have seen his tap dance routine, but how about mine? Good shtick, huh?
Pictures, photos from old family albums. Take them out of the album, pin it on the wall, and throw darts in it. And a 5-3-1 scoring system.
Photographs of your mom.
Right, but they were old ones when we had a mustache. He hates them. And they swore you won't tell anyone what I've been fighting about. Because, frankly, I knew if my dad found out, he'd really go upset.
Yeah, I'm sure you would know.
No, I mean, he really thought he looked like a stud in that mustache.
Paul, you remember his honor, the mayor.
Hello, sir. Paul, your sister's running an ugly campaign against me. All this talk about ethnic cleansing of Outlanders doesn't fill me with hope for the future of our historic city. So I hear you got your signatures. Nice work.
Thanks. The election date's been set, July 14th.
Well, that gives you what, about 2.5 months to whip the populace into a state of xenophobic hysteria?
Oh, God knows I'll try.
I look forward to it.
Hi. How you doing, Mr. Fowler?
Hey!
I used to work down at Foster's.
Oh, sure. You're the little guy who used to work down at Foster's.
Gee, how'd you know that, Ray?
Hey, I know who she is. How are things out at the diner, April?
I don't know, sir. It's been gone about as long as I have.
It was a damn fine diner. Steak and eggs, huh? I don't get over here that much anymore.
How's the house painting business?
House painting? No, I don't paint houses no more. I'm vice president of the Deming Chamber of Commerce. And I sell home furniture. If you come over to Deming some afternoon, I'm just about to give you one of those new lazy boy recliners.
No, I like what I'm sitting in just fine.
Oh, that's fine. It's good to see you.
Some of Mark's work in film. About 6 months ago, Mark said to me, I need to talk to you about my memorial. And I couldn't have that conversation. It took me several months to get the strength where I could face him, not crying, and say, let's talk about the memorial. So finally I did. I talked to Mark about his memorial, and he said he wanted Jessica to sing, and he wanted Grace to sing, and he wanted the following people to speak, but nobody could speak more than 3 minutes. I did my best. I told everyone 3 minutes, but couldn't get it done. He said, I don't want the memorial being more than 90 minutes. I am so sorry. I know I let you down. I did my very best. For more than half my life, I have been Mark Medoff's son-in-law. That's a moniker and a distinction that has been both a burden and a blessing. I felt lost in Mark's towering shadow while at the same time basking in his glorious glow. He raised me from a pompous young actor at age 20 when he convinced me to transfer to New Mexico State University to study with him. He turned me into a caring film director and educator. He taught me how to be an artist, a teacher, and more importantly, a husband and father. I spoke to him almost every day for 32 years. Most days it was a quick call. Hey, how you doing? Anything going on? Nothing. Talk later. Love you. Mark didn't like talking on the phone very much. Every project, decision, or move I made for the past 32 years was influenced or guided by this incredible man. And I'm not sure how I'm going to navigate my life without him. The lessons he taught me, the man he made me, the burdens and blessings he gave to me will be my compass. One of the last things he said to me as he laid in his hospital bed struggling was, you aren't the son I never had. You are the son I did have. You are my son, and I love you. I promised him that I would take the enormous baton that he had passed to me and be the very best teacher, filmmaker, husband, and yes, son-in-law. Stephanie Medoff is going to be the busiest person in Las Cruces. You'll see her at every Aggie football game, every Aggie basketball game, every charity fundraiser. So if there's anything going on in town, please let me know so that Stephanie and I can go. My heart is heavy. It lies with my glorious wife, Deborah Medoff Marks, my sisters, Rachel Medoff Harrison and Jessica Medoff Bunchman, my mother, Stephanie Medoff, my brothers, Robert Harrison and Michael Bunchman, my own children, my nephews, and my niece. I promised Mark that I would watch over all of them. We will watch over each other, as Mark would say, a fortress under Mark's watchful angel eyes. I love you, Mark. I'm glad I told it to you thousands of times. I'm glad you told me back thousands of times. You wanted us to be brief, no more than 3 minutes. I did my part. This is probably, this memorial, this eulogy is the first thing that I've ever done, that I've ever written in 32 years that Mark was not a part of. Immediately after the memorial, there will be a reception at the Farm and Ranch Museum. You're all invited. The family will be there. It'll be an opportunity for you to express firsthand your condolences and thoughts and feelings about Mark. There'll be a microphone. You can also talk about Mark. But before we do that, I'd like to ask you, if you're a student of Mark Medoff's, I'd like you to please stand. If you're a student of Mark's, please stand. If you've ever worked on a production with Mark, please stand. And please remain standing. If Mark Medoff directly or indirectly influenced your life, gave you advice or guidance, or inspired you in any way, please stand. Mark never said no. He was never too busy, too important, or too successful. Anytime a person or a student asked him for his help, advice, guidance, read a screenplay, watch a film, Mark always said yes. It is his greatest legacy that we help others. An inheritance is what we leave for someone. A legacy is what we leave in someone. In Mark's name and in his memory, let's all say yes. Say yes for Mark to your friends and colleagues. Say yes to Mark for your students. Say yes to Mark for your family and loved ones. Say yes for Mark. Say yes, say yes, say yes. And while we're all standing, let's give Mark Medoff one final standing ovation. Rest in peace, Mark. Your greatest production now begins.
When you walk through a storm, hold your chin up high, and don't be afraid of the dark. At the end of the storm is a golden sky, and the sweet silver song of a lark. Walk on through the wind, walk on through the rain, though your dreams be tossed and blown. Walk on, with hope in your heart, and you'll never
Thank you. Hope to see you at the Farm and Ranch Museum.
NMSU, Chancellor.